Whether you're planning to sew by hand or by machine, this sewing project is for you. In the previous video, I showed you what we're going to be making, and they're going to be these cute fabric boxes. Welcome to Sewing for Your Sanity, Class 1, Part 2. This class is provided to you for free in exchange for your comments and watching the full video. Right, by now you have your fabrics and you've cut them out. In this video, we're going to sew them together. The first instructions will be geared towards using a sewing machine, and then after that, I'll show you how to do it by hand. If you're new to using a sewing machine, I have previous videos about how to thread your machine. Your sewing machine has grooves on that metal plate, and it shows you exactly where to line up your fabric. We're going to sew the inside fabric box and the outside fabric box separately. This clip, I'm working on the inside of the box. I stabilized my main fabric with fleece, which I showed you in the previous video. Place the right sides of your fabric together, your main fabric or your colorful fabric. Then using pins or clips, we're going to sew around these 3 seams. Seams are where you join 2 or more fabrics with stitches. After you finish pinning those seams, take your project to the sewing machine. You're going to sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you're not sure which groove on your machine is for 1/2 inch seam allowance, you can use your measuring tape or a ruler to find out which one it is. Now line up the edge of your fabric with that groove. Start with your needle down in the fabric, do a back stitch or reverse stitch with your machine, and then sew your seam. Almost at the 1-minute mark, and we still have to do the hand stitching. So if you need to take a break, make sure you save this video and leave a comment letting me know. When you get to the end of your seam, make sure you back stitch it again. On my machine, it's a button that says reverse. If you're using a sewing machine, you just finished part 2 of this class. If you're going to sew by hand, we're going to hand stitch those exact seams that we just did on the machine. Remember, the right sides of the fabric go together, meaning the colorful side or the print on your fabric goes together. Since we're sewing by hand, we're going to give ourselves a guide, and we're going to mark the seam line, which is 1/2 inch from the edge. You can use your measuring tape or a ruler. Pin the fabric in a couple places so it doesn't slip around. Now you can thread your needle. Our very first step is to secure the thread so our fabric doesn't separate. This is similar to doing the back stitch on the machine. You're just going to repeat the same stitch about 3 times right at the edge of your seam. If you need a slower version or more instruction, please let me know in the comment section. Next, we're going to turn our fabric so that the seam allowance faces us. Go into the back of the fabric through B. Bring the needle back up through to the front of the fabric through A. Now insert your needle back through point B, and this time bring it up through the back of the fabric through to point C. Now from C, you're going to insert the needle back down through point A. You're going to keep repeating this pattern until you finish the seam. I'm sure by the end of this, you're going to want to get a sewing machine because it's so much faster. Use this back stitch on all 3 of the seams we pointed out earlier. And once you finish completing those seams, you have completed part 2 of class number 1 of Sewing for Your Sanity. And hopefully you haven't lost your mind yet. If you have, join me on live because we're going over all of these steps together. You come back to my page for part 3.